Remember what I said about Florida? If you get a murder charge or you get a conviction for a first-degree murder, instant life. Ain't no better way to scare somebody than say, we got 3 or 4 chances to convict you of life imprisonment.
YNW Melly completely lost it when whispers spread through the block that YNW Bortlen had done the unthinkable, snitched on him. This wasn't your average rap beef or a petty crew fallout. This was betrayal on a level that shattered what little loyalty was left in their circle. Melly's legal team was blindsided. The courtroom energy flipped overnight, and insiders say Melly went off on his own lawyers in pure rage, feeling like his entire life had just been traded for someone else's freedom. Here's the cold truth. This was the ultimate backstab. The streets have seen plenty of dudes fold before, but what Bortlen did, that's betrayal straight out of a snake's playbook. Just when fans thought loyalty might actually mean something in this wild case, Bortlen allegedly tossed his own brother straight to the wolves to dodge a life sentence. And the way he pulled it off? Straight grimy. Bortlen's betrayal wasn't random. It was timed like a setup. His separate trial was supposed to kick off with jury selection on September 10th, 2025. But out of nowhere, the day before, September 9th, he entered a quiet plea deal in Broward County Circuit Court. No warning, no signal, just a slick courtroom move that caught Melly, his camp, and half the internet completely off guard. This wasn't panic, it was precision. To make it even worse, people who knew them say this wasn't just business gone bad. These two were brothers from the mud. They came up together, shared food, money, dreams, and even the same enemies. For 6 long years, they stood side by side fighting the same murder charges, with their legal teams locked in together like soldiers in the trenches. To see that unity crack? It hit deep, man. According to leaked details, Bortlen's cooperation deal reads like a blueprint on how to sell out your best friend while saving yourself. Under Florida law, his deal allowed him to dodge a full murder trial, one that could be guaranteed a life sentence or worse if convicted. In plain words, he made the trade of a lifetime: snitch and walk out the door, or stay loyal and rot behind bars forever. What he chose spoke volumes, and it shook the entire hip-hop world to its core.
His plea eliminates the things that they were having a hard time trying to prove, because his admission will help the story that they're trying to tell versus YNW.
The cold specifics of Bortlen's plea deal show just how desperate prosecutors were to get this man to talk. They didn't just offer him a lifeline, they practically rolled out the red carpet for him to snitch. According to court documents, YNW Bortlen pleaded no contest to 2 counts of accessory after the fact to a capital felony tied directly to the murder charges, and that wasn't all. He also copped to 2 more counts from a completely separate 2023 case involving witness tampering, one for tampering with a witness, and another for unlawful use of a 2-way communication device. Yeah, that's how deep it went. But the streets went crazy when they found out what prosecutors were willing to give up just to flip him. In exchange for his cooperation, they dropped both first-degree murder charges, along with another tampering charge and one for directing the activities of a criminal gang. That's not a deal. That's a full-blown jackpot for the state, and it left everyone stunned. This wasn't about justice. It was about getting Melly's head on a silver platter no matter what it took. The final sentence made things even messier.
The individual who served on the jury is going public with details on their experience, including allegations of an explosive and manipulative fellow juror.
Bortlen was officially found guilty on the remaining charges and hit with a 10-year prison sentence in the Florida state system, followed by 6 years of probation after his release. Sounds heavy, right? But here's the kicker that had everyone calling foul. He was given credit for the 4.5 years he'd already spent locked up since his 2019 arrest. That means this man could be walking out in around 5.5 years or less if he plays the good behavior game right. It's like he snitched his way into a discount sentence, and the streets aren't letting that slide. But the real snake move isn't just the reduced time. It is what came with the deal. Court insiders confirmed that Bortlen agreed to provide a sworn proffer, a formal statement given directly to prosecutors later on, laying out everything he knows about the murders. the night in question, and Melly's alleged role. That means whatever loyalty existed between them, gone forever. He didn't just turn his back on Melly, he put the nail in the coffin of their brotherhood, all in exchange for a shorter bid and a second chance at life outside those bars. The legal weight of Bortlen cooperation deal is a ticking time bomb for Melly's defense team. Once that paperwork was signed, it changed everything. Because now, if prosecutors call him to the stand, Bortlen can't just sit there and play silent anymore. Double jeopardy has officially attached to his case, which means he can't be retried for the same crimes he already pled to. So if he's questioned under oath, he might be legally forced to talk, without being able to hide behind the Fifth Amendment. Imagine that. The man who once called himself Melly's brother could now be the very voice that seals his fate in open court. When Melly's retrial finally hits in October 2027, this move could blow the whole case wide open. If Bortlen even tries to clam up, he could be slapped with contempt charges on the spot. Prosecutors know it too. They've been waiting for this leverage since day one. What was once a tight, unified defense is now cracked right down the middle, and Melly's team is scrambling to patch the damage. The betrayal runs deeper than most fans realize. It's not just about loyalty, it's about survival. And Bortlen chose himself.
And Mr. Demmons responds very succinctly, "I did that." Shh.
To really feel how brutal this cut is, we gotta rewind to where it all started. Melly's first trial was already a circus. The nation watched every twist like it was a Netflix thriller, and it ended in total chaos. Back in 2023, that trial collapsed into a mistrial because of prosecutorial misconduct and a hung jury that just couldn't agree. The retrial was pushed all the way to October 2027, and this time the stakes couldn't be higher, with the death penalty back on the table if he's convicted. That first courtroom showdown was madness from start to finish. It ran for 19 straight days. Witness after witness, text messages, ballistic reports, cell phone pings, even digital mapping of the shooting scene. The defense kept throwing motions for mistrial, and the judge kept denying them. Finally, on July 21, 2023, the case hit the jury. They deliberated for 14 hours over 2 exhausting days, but couldn't reach a unanimous decision. And here's where things got even crazier. After the mistrial, some jurors came forward anonymously spilling major behind-the-scenes drama. They exposed explosive fights inside the deliberation room, manipulation, shouting matches, and bias so heavy it almost tipped the scales. One juror even told reporters the whole room felt like chaos personified, thanks to one explosive, manipulative juror who allegedly steered the conversation just to spark confusion. That's how close Melly came to being cooked the first time. And with Bortlen's new deal hanging over him, the second time might not end in a draw. The chaos that went down inside that jury room during Melly's first trial sounds straight out of a courtroom thriller. Reports claim the jury was initially 11-1 in favor of conviction, meaning Melly was just one vote away from being found guilty. But then came that one disruptive juror who allegedly turned the whole thing upside down.
I reported, but Chris told me the same story, and also it was a $500,000 play, and Melly was going to get $200,000, Sack was going to get $200,000, Chris was going to get $100,000.
This person started talking, stirring tension, and somehow managed to convince 2 jurors to switch their votes to not guilty, leaving the final count at 9-3 for conviction, a split that forced a mistrial. That's the only reason Melly dodged a guilty verdict, and insiders still say it looked more like jury manipulation than fair deliberation.
Threaten me with your little gun. I got big guns. You couldn't even take a weed charge. If you don't sit your pussy down and don't ever come.
It was chaos disguised as justice. For Melly's team, it was both terrifying and a small miracle. They escaped total disaster, but barely. Yet the relief didn't last long, because prosecutors instantly announced they were coming back for round 2. And since that mistrial, the retrial process has been a nightmare of endless motions, court delays, and setbacks. Each postponement has kept Melly trapped behind bars, isolated, frustrated, and reportedly breaking down under brutal jail conditions.
came to town, never came to my son's funeral, never came to Sak's funeral. And these are your best friends. He passed straight through the county of Indian River, went to Brevard and did a music video, but he couldn't even stop and pay his condolences to his best friend's mom.
Sources close to him say his mental and physical state have been deteriorating fast, especially after years of solitary confinement and constant pressure from guards and inmates who know who he is. By the time this retrial finally hits, Melly will have been locked up almost 8 years without a conviction. His defense keeps arguing that this is a clear violation of his constitutional rights, but the system hasn't shown much mercy. And then, just when his lawyers were trying to rebuild momentum, Bortlen flipped.
The promises that were made to us by YNW for me to quit my job and they would take care of us were all lies. They didn't want us talking with prosecutors, but now they have all disappeared. I quit my job based on what Frack and his wife or company said. Now look, we can't go home.
The timing couldn't have been worse. His betrayal came right as Melly's new trial date was being locked in, and it completely demolished the defense's foundation. Bortlen wasn't just a co-defendant. He was the glue holding their strategy together. The one man who knew the story, the one whose silence mattered most. With his cooperation deal in play, prosecutors suddenly had the final weapon they'd been missing. Now his testimony could be the nail in Melly's coffin. For years, the defense's whole approach rested on keeping Bortlen loyal and off the stand. But with him now working with the state, Melly's legal team has been forced to start from zero, rebuilding their defense brick by brick while knowing the prosecution is stacking theirs sky high. And that's what makes this next trial so dangerous. Prosecutors already have a mountain of evidence: digital data, witness statements, ballistics, text messages, phone tracking, and even alleged confessions tying Melly to the crime. With Bortlen's cooperation, they now have the puzzle complete. Each piece links perfectly: motive, opportunity, and betrayal. The state's narrative is chilling. They claim Melly executed his two closest homies in cold blood, driven by greed and ego, then staged the scene to look like a drive-by. Whether true or not, that story has power. And now, with his own brother turned against him, Melly's facing the fight of his life with no one left to trust.
You're not diagnosed with bipolar or anything like that?
Yeah, I am.
So you are bipolar.
The entire foundation of the state's case is built on forensic evidence that shattered the original drive-by story YNW Bortlen fed to police. That so-called highway ambush never made sense, and investigators quickly realized why. Because when they combed through the stretch of road where Bortlen claimed it all went down, there wasn't a single shred of proof. No bullet casings, no broken glass, no tire damage, nothing. The scene was spotless, and that emptiness told its own story. A story that ripped apart the defense's version of events.
In 7th grade, they sent me to the bakery at shit.
What incident? Was there an incident that transpired that got you there? What happened?
Yeah.
What happened?
Oh, it's gonna be some crazy.
Kept bringing knives to school and shit.
This total lack of physical evidence left only two possibilities. Either the shooting happened somewhere completely different, or the whole drive-by narrative was a straight-up lie. And prosecutors made sure to prove which one it was. They didn't stop at poking holes. They rebuilt the entire timeline themselves, piece by piece, with cold physical facts that painted Melly in a corner.
Around and pulled one out on one of the motherfuckers in the lunchroom.
So you pulled a knife out on someone at school?
Yeah, then I did some terrorist.
Hidden inside the Jeep that night, detectives found one lonely .40 caliber shell casing tucked in a white plastic bag, a haunting clue that something had gone horribly wrong inside that vehicle. Then, things got darker.
About to slice my neck, slice her neck, fuck it.
Oh,
Investigators uncovered 8 more .40 caliber casings at a different location, matching the one from the Jeep, where prosecutors now claim Melly and Bortlen fired shots after the murders to make it look like a random drive-by. That's not a coincidence. That's choreography.
Sent me to the crazy home, and I got right. They put me on.
How long were you in there?
7 days.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
If true, that evidence means one thing. This wasn't chaos. It was calculation. The shooting didn't happen on the highway. It happened inside the whip. And afterward, someone tried to stage the whole thing like a Hollywood setup to make it look like they'd been ambushed. That's not loyalty. That's deception wrapped in precision. But the most damaging blow came from the ballistics report. Forensic experts testified that the bullets traveled left to right across the victims' bodies. That trajectory lines up perfectly with shots fired from the left rear seat, exactly where surveillance footage showed Melly sitting when he left the recording studio that night. That's not speculation. That's science. The prosecution used this detail to hammer their theory home. The shooter wasn't some random car on the road. It was someone inside that Jeep. And then came the digital footprint, the invisible trail that sealed the story even tighter. Using advanced cell tower data and GPS tracking, investigators pulled records from both Melly's and Bortlen's phones. The data placed them together at the precise time and location of the murders, completely contradicting the drive-by tale they told cops that night. So when you line up the scene, the shell casings, the autopsy, the surveillance, and the cell records, it forms a brutal, airtight narrative that prosecutors claim is impossible to ignore. To them, this isn't a mystery anymore. It's a blueprint of betrayal written in blood, mapped by data and backed by science. The digital forensics only made things worse for Melly. FBI mapping data showed phone pings from both Melly and Bortlen near the murder scene at the exact time frame of the killings. While the pings weren't pinpoint precise, they were close enough to crush the original drive-by story. On top of that, a geofence warrant, which scans for every nearby phone signal at a specific location, turned up 0 devices at the supposed drive-by spot. That meant there was no digital proof that anyone fired at them from outside. According to prosecutors, the tech trail painted one undeniable picture. Melly was right there during every second of the tragedy, moving in sync with Bortlen from start to finish. The timeline built from this data became the backbone of the state's argument. But then prosecutors dropped what they called a hidden confession, an Instagram DM sent from Melly's account to Peasy Gambino on the very day of the murders. The message read, "I did that. Shh." Just 3 chilling words. Prosecutors seized on it like it was the smoking gun, claiming it was Melly's own admission of guilt. They told the court it wasn't just a casual message. It was his pride talking, his silence plea saying, "Don't tell nobody." The defense tried to spin it differently, arguing the message was vague, misinterpreted, or even out of context. But the timing, deadly. It dropped right after the killings, which made it impossible for the jury to ignore. Still, the biggest emotional blow didn't come from the phones or the texts. It came from Christopher Thomas Sr., the father of one of the victims, YNW Juvy. His courtroom appearance shook the building. When he took the stand, you could feel the tension. He didn't just mourn his son, he explained why he believed Melly turned on his own crew. Thomas Sr. told the jury that greed tore the YNW family apart, that Melly owed both Juvy and Sakchaser $200,000 each from a $500,000 deal but refused to pay them a dime. That money, he claimed, created a rift that spiraled into full-blown hostility. According to his testimony, things got heated long before that fateful night. He described how the tension over money turned physical, that there was a confrontation, maybe even a fight, between Melly and the victims before everything went down. His words were powerful, emotional, and devastating, painting Melly not as a victim of misunderstanding, but as a man cornered by his own ambition. When Thomas Sr. finished speaking, the courtroom was dead silent. His words gave prosecutors exactly what they needed: a clear motive, a believable emotional trigger, and a human face to the tragedy. Combined with the digital trail, the cryptic DM, and the forensic evidence, it felt like the prosecution had just closed the trap tighter than ever around Melly. According to Juvy's father, the tension inside the YNW camp had exploded long before those tragic shots were fired. He told the courtroom that Sakchaser physically assaulted Melly in front of Melly's girlfriend, allegedly knocking out his teeth during a violent confrontation over the unpaid $200,000 debt. That humiliation, getting laid out in front of his girl, was the kind of blow that cut deep. Prosecutors argued that moment became the emotional spark for a revenge-driven murder. They painted the scene vividly. A young rapper boiling with pride, ego, and rage, watching his empire crumble and his respect vanish right in front of him. The testimony revealed that this wasn't just business beef. It was personal and explosive. Family tensions had already been boiling behind the scenes. Texts and witness statements exposed ongoing conflict between Sakchaser and Melly's mother, Jamie Demons King, who openly admitted on Instagram Live that Sakchaser once threatened her with a gun during an argument. That revelation gave prosecutors another possible motive: protecting family honor. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, revenge, and a dangerous mix of pride and pressure that could drive anyone to do something unforgivable. Prosecutors hammered that angle hard. They said Melly's actions after the murders screamed consciousness of guilt. Neither he nor Bortlen ever visited the victims' families. To them, that silence spoke louder than any words. Christopher Thomas Sr., Juvy's father, testified that from day one, he knew Melly was behind it. He pointed to the fact that Melly never attended either funeral and, adding insult to injury, even came back to the victim's hometown to shoot a music video without once stopping to pay his respects. That image hit the courtroom like a gut punch. It made Melly look cold, detached, and unapologetic. Then came the next bombshell, the witness tampering charges that both Melly and Bortlen faced. Prosecutors argued this wasn't some isolated slip-up. It was part of a larger effort to silence key voices. The most jaw-dropping moment came when Felicia Holmes, the mother of Melly's ex-girlfriend Mariah Hamilton, took the stand. She testified about receiving suspicious texts and feeling threatened by Melly's manager, Track Jameson Francois, who allegedly offered her $5,000 after the murders. Prosecutors said this wasn't charity. It was hush money. A calculated move to buy her silence and control the narrative. Holmes's Instagram DMs became a crucial piece of evidence. In one shocking message shown to the court, she warned Melly's management team that she would become Miss Snitch if the payment stopped, implying that the money was directly tied to her keeping quiet. Those messages revealed frustration over broken promises and made it clear that something shady was happening behind the scenes. To prosecutors, it was textbook witness intimidation dressed up as damage control. But it didn't stop there. The prosecution pushed even deeper, presenting gang evidence to frame the murders as part of a bigger, more calculated pattern of criminal behavior. They painted Melly not as a confused young artist, but as a figure caught in a web of gang loyalty, greed, and vengeance. A man willing to eliminate his own friends to climb higher in the hierarchy. By this stage of the trial, the jury wasn't just hearing about bullets and forensics. They were seeing a complete portrait of betrayal, pride, and power spiraling out of control. From the humiliation of being punched in front of his girl, to the money owed to the alleged gun threat toward his mother, every layer of this case built toward one chilling conclusion for the prosecution. This wasn't random. It was personal. It was revenge. And to them, it was murder in its purest, coldest form. Prosecutors didn't hold back when it came to painting YNW Melly as a full-blown gang affiliate. They threw up photos in court showing him flashing Bloods gang signs, screenshotted text messages loaded with coded slang, and even zoomed in on tattoos that investigators claimed tied him directly to the set. A gang expert was brought to the stand to break it all down, explaining how Melly's language, gestures, and online persona mirrored that of an active Blood member. The prosecution's argument? That these murders might not have been random at all, but instead connected to gang advancement or even an initiation hit. It was a chilling angle, one that gave the state yet another possible motive for why Melly would turn on his own friends. But beneath all the courtroom theatrics and accusations lies a darker, more complicated truth, the psychological maze inside Jamel Demon's mind. Because to really grasp what's happening in the YNW Melly case, you can't just look at the evidence. You have to look at the man himself. This isn't just a murder case. It is a deep dive into a troubled psyche that has been spiraling since long before fame or money ever came into the picture. Jamel's story reads like a tragedy written in slow motion. From early on, people around him said he showed signs of mental instability, battling voices, mood swings, and behavior that flipped between charisma and chaos. Some close to him even whispered that he struggled with multiple personalities, something he himself hinted at in his music. That's where the name Melly versus Melvin came from, his own way of separating the darkness inside him from the artist the world adored. The prosecution used this narrative to suggest volatility and danger, but psychologists see it differently. They see a young man molded by survival, trauma, and confusion. Melly grew up in Gifford, Florida, one of those rough, low-income areas where violence isn't a rumor, it's a daily reality. Raised by his mother, Jamie Demons King, who gave birth to him at just 14 or 15 years old, Melly never really had the stability or guidance most kids get. His father was absent, the streets became his teacher, and the lessons he learned were written in blood and desperation. By his teenage years, Melly was already caught between two worlds, the dream of becoming a superstar and the pull of the streets that had raised him. The more fame he got, the more the lines blurred. The cheerful kid with a big smile became the artist writing songs about demons, death, and split identities. His mental and emotional breakdowns weren't just artistic expression. They were red flags waving in plain sight. To the prosecution, that instability made him capable of anything. To the defense, it was proof that this wasn't pure evil. It was the tragic outcome of a broken environment and untreated pain. Either way, by the time the murders happened, Jamel Demons wasn't just another rapper. He was a young man drowning in his own mind, torn between two selves, one chasing glory and another haunted by everything he'd seen and survived. The story of YNW Melly's childhood reads like a raw case study in hood trauma, a blueprint for how pain, neglect, and violence can twist a young mind before it even gets a chance to grow. He was born into chaos, a teenage mother fighting to survive, an absent father figure, and a neighborhood where gunfire wasn't shocking. It was background noise. Violence wasn't rare, it was routine. And when you mix all that with poverty and instability, you start to see how Jamel Demons, the boy who'd become Melly, was shaped by his environment long before the music, the fame, or the murder charges ever appeared. The real turning point came when abuse crept into his own home. After his mother, Jamie Demons King, remarried, her new husband brought a criminal record, and with it, physical violence. That household, already fragile, turned into a battlefield. Melly himself would later reference this pain in his early unreleased tracks, songs recorded as a teenager, where he rapped about the beatings, the fear, and the anger that started to define his world. Those weren't just lyrics, they were confessions. Each verse gave a glimpse into a mind learning to equate survival with aggression. By the time Melly hit his teenage years, the signs of deep psychological turmoil were already flashing bright red. Teachers, neighbors, even friends could see something was off. His temper was short, his moods unpredictable, and his fascination with guns and power was growing stronger. The streets became both his outlet and his escape. Then came 2015, the first major incident that set his criminal record in motion, a shooting near his high school that led to his arrest. He was barely a teenager, yet already behind bars. During this same period, Melly bounced in and out of mental health treatment facilities, a revolving door that did little to help him. He'd get diagnosed, medicated, released, and then thrown right back into the same violent environment that broke him in the first place. It was a cycle of failure that no one seemed able or willing to stop. And that revolving door became a mirror of how America's systems treat kids like him, label them, lock them up, and forget them. Official records later revealed the full picture of Melly's mental health struggles. Doctors diagnosed him with bipolar disorder, which causes intense emotional highs and lows, major depression, which drained his motivation, and ADHD, which fueled his impulsivity and restlessness. Together, these conditions made him unpredictable, a storm brewing in human form. Both prosecutors and defense attorneys would later use this psychological profile in court, one side painting him as dangerous, the other as damaged. But perhaps the darkest piece of Melly's early life was his growing bond with violence. Guns weren't just tools of protection in Gifford. They were status symbols, extensions of identity. From a terrifyingly young age, Melly was handling weapons, surrounded by older kids who taught him that fear equals respect. That exposure hardened him fast, blurring the line between defense and destruction. By the time the world knew his name, the foundation had already been laid. A childhood filled with trauma, a mind torn between mania and melancholy, and a soul conditioned to fight instead of heal. What happened later wasn't born in fame. It was born in that same broken home, forged in a community where pain was normal and love was survival. In one of the most revealing interviews of his entire life, YNW Melly opened up about something that sounded straight out of a dark psychological case study: his childhood obsession with guns. He admitted that as a little kid he became addicted to his uncle's firearm, saying that holding it made him feel powerful in a world that constantly made him feel powerless. That early fascination with weapons didn't fade. It followed him like a shadow, showing up again and again throughout his music, his behavior, and ultimately in the charges that landed him behind bars. That gun became more than metal. It became his identity. But one of the most disturbing insights into Melly's mind came from a radio interview where he talked openly about how deep his violent tendencies ran, even as a kid. He described his behavior back in 7th grade, and it was chilling. Melly said he used to bring knives to school over and over again, and not just to flash them for attention. He admitted to pulling them out on other kids, talking about it with a casualness that made it sound routine. "I kept bringing knives to school and shit," he said, like it was just another day in the hood. Mental health professionals later said this kind of early premeditated violence showed clear signs of a serious psychological disturbance. It wasn't about being tough. It was about control, fear, and survival, all tangled up in a child's mind that never learned safety. Then came the story that left everyone silent, the day he nearly took a life before he even hit high school. Melly revealed that he once almost killed a girl in school and then planned to take his own life right after, a potential murder-suicide, at the age of 12 or 13. He said that incident was the breaking point. The school intervened, and he was immediately sent to a mental hospital, where he stayed for a week. But his words were haunting. "They just sent me to the crazy home for 7 days," he said, and that was it. 7 days. That's all the help he ever got. Then they released him right back into the same environment that had created the trauma in the first place. The system didn't heal him, it just pressed pause. That pattern, short-term treatment, long-term neglect, defined Melly's early years and shaped the unstable mind that would one day find itself on trial for murder. Fast forward to today, and the conversation about Melly's mental health hasn't stopped. It's only gotten louder. His attorneys have repeatedly argued that his incarceration conditions are cruel and degrading, worsening the same mental struggles that haunted him as a kid. They've claimed he's being kept in isolation for long stretches, denied consistent therapy, and subjected to physical and psychological stress that no one could endure indefinitely. Since his arrest on February 13, 2019, Melly, real name Jamel Demons, has been sitting in the Broward County Jail in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That's over 6.5 years locked away without a final conviction. As of September 10, 2025, he spent more time behind bars waiting for trial than some convicts spend serving entire sentences. The toll has been visible. Reports describe Melly as thinner, quieter, and far more withdrawn than the flashy, smiling rapper fans once knew. He's gone from viral hits and sold-out shows to a concrete cell, endless court delays, and whispers about his sanity. The same boy who once felt powerful holding his uncle's gun now finds himself completely powerless, trapped in a system that might break him before it ever sets him free. Over the past few years, YNW Melly, real name Jamel Demons, has become the center of both legal controversy and public outrage as shocking details about his treatment inside Broward County Jail continue to surface. His supporters claim he's being psychologically tortured, while Melly himself has described the experience as worse than death row. According to multiple filings and statements, He's been subjected to extreme isolation, stripped of basic human interaction, and mentally broken down behind closed doors. For more than 3 years, Melly says he's been locked inside administrative segregation, a fancy term for solitary confinement. He's allegedly housed alone in a small, sealed-off pod, with even a sheet draped over his cell door to block all view and prevent any contact with other inmates. Imagine being trapped like that, day after day, year after year, cut off from sight, sound, and sanity. His team claims it's a slow psychological death, not rehabilitation. What's even more disturbing are the communication restrictions that come with this confinement. Melly reportedly hasn't had a single phone or video call in years. His mail is heavily delayed, sometimes taking weeks to reach him, and most of his letters arrive yellowed with age, long after the world outside has moved on. Family visits? Non-existent. His mother, Jamie Demons King, hasn't been allowed to speak to her son in person or on the phone since at least 2022. She can only send letters, which jail officials reportedly hold for review, sometimes never delivering them at all. But beyond the emotional pain, there's a legal nightmare hidden inside all this. Melly's attorneys have argued that these conditions make it nearly impossible for him to participate. In his own defense, they've detailed serious legal access issues, from difficulty reviewing documents during rare attorney visits to being denied consistent access to case materials. Without proper communication, how can he prepare for trial? If these allegations are proven true, they could form the foundation for a major constitutional appeal, specifically for violating his Sixth Amendment right to effective assistance of counsel. Melly's legal team has repeatedly documented the toll this treatment has taken on his mental health. Since his arrest on February 13, 2019, his condition has reportedly deteriorated severely. Court filings describe erratic behavior, emotional breakdowns, and long periods of silence that his lawyers say are direct results of isolation and sensory deprivation. In 2024, Melly filed a lawsuit against the Broward County Sheriff's Office, claiming cruel and inhumane treatment that intensified his pre-existing mental disorders. He accused jail officials of ignoring his psychiatric needs while deliberately worsening his isolation. These allegations line up with what mental health experts have warned for years, that prolonged solitary confinement can destroy a person's stability, especially someone already battling bipolar disorder and depression like Melly. Still, despite mounting pressure from fans, mental health advocates, and even celebrities, the courts have refused to budge. Multiple bail requests have been flat-out denied, each rejection signaling the court's firm stance. They believe the evidence against him is overwhelming and that he poses a danger to the community if released. It's a decision that leaves him trapped, physically, mentally, and legally, inside a system that seems determined to break him before he ever steps back into open air. For Melly, every day behind those bars is more than a countdown to trial. It is a battle to stay sane, to be heard, and to survive conditions that some say would make even the strongest man lose his mind. YNW Melly, real name Jamel Demons, has faced rejection after rejection when it comes to getting out before trial. Since his arrest back in 2019, judges have denied pretrial release at least 4 separate times, each denial slamming the door tighter on any hope of freedom before his retrial. The first came immediately after his arrest, when the court ruled that his charges were too severe for bond. Then, during the height of COVID-19 in 2020, even as Melly reportedly battled the virus behind bars, his plea for compassionate release was turned down again. After his 2023 mistrial, he tried once more, arguing that years in isolation had destroyed his health and that he wasn't a flight risk. Still, the court said no. And finally, in May 2025, despite his record label offering house arrest and a multi-million-dollar bond, the judge once again denied him pre-trial release, calling him a continued danger to society. That decision hit Melly's team hard, especially as the retrial looms closer and closer. Now, as the case inches toward its final courtroom showdown, everything about Melly's life, his mental health struggles, his criminal history, and his alleged crimes, is converging into one massive storm. The prosecution sees a pattern of violence, manipulation, and cold calculation. The defense, meanwhile, is pushing a narrative of trauma, mental illness, and a broken system that failed a troubled kid long before he became a headline. Both sides are gearing up for one of the most emotionally charged retrials in modern hip-hop history, and with Bortlen's cooperation officially locked in, the pressure couldn't be higher. That former brother-in-arms could become the state's most devastating witness. On top of that, the death penalty still looms over the entire case like a shadow waiting to drop. It's no longer just about whether Melly did it. It's about whether his tragic backstory, his diagnosed mental disorders, and the trauma that shaped him can possibly save his life once the verdict comes down. One thing's for sure. When that retrial begins, the world will be watching. Every testimony, every tear, every twist will decide the fate of a man who went from chart-topping fame to fighting for his very existence. If you made it this far, you know this case is far from ordinary. Tap one of the videos now playing on your screen to uncover even deeper stories just like this, where fame, fear, and tragedy collide in the wild world of hip-hop.